Hello, everyone, and welcome back to No Hidden Agenda TV, sponsored by Caesars Entertainment and the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. I'm Sarah Solomon, and I am super excited because the guest sitting next to me may look familiar to you for several reasons, but one of our biggest reasons is, of course, Nolan Nichols was on a previous episode of No Hidden Agenda TV, and we are so excited to be interviewing him again, but in person. Yay!
It's so much better in person. It's so exciting to be here, and yeah, just great work on the show, and just love to be here in studio in person.
Awesome. Well, we're so excited to have you, and I know Global Meetings Industry Day just happened. I'm sure you've been traveling here, there, and everywhere. So how did you spend GMED?
So it's actually on the 12-hour broadcast with MPI last week on behalf of Caesars Entertainment, and it was so much fun. I think this industry is just so engaging on the chat. It was fun to follow along. The engagement all day for the 12 hours was incredible. I feel like there's very few industries that just have so many passionate people about what they do, and it was just so much fun celebrating just a really important day.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the audience took a lot away from you. And for those that don't know, Nolan is actually a wonderful keynote speaker and really specializes in wellness. If you haven't seen our previous interview with him, be sure to check it out. It's on our YouTube channel. It's just phenomenal. And those are some of my favorite takeaways as far as wellness is concerned, from our discussion. But I want to dive into more wellness conversation with you while we have you here in person. So, this concept of wellness tourism has been coming up more and more in conversations. As you know, our industry is trying to find ways to implement wellness to the best of our abilities into our meetings and events. So when we look at wellness tourism and these travel experiences overall, what exactly does wellness tourism mean, and how can that be implemented into some of our meetings and events?
Yeah, so to answer that question, I was talking with some friends just last week, and they were about to go to New York City, and I was asking what they were going to do. The top thing they said was that they're really looking forward to going to a spa that they had researched. And wellness tourism is such a growing field right now. I don't know if you would, there's so many things to do in New York City. That was their top thing. I don't know if you asked that question just 2 or 3 years ago, if you get that response. I think there's a growing appetite for wellness and well-being, and I think that's going to translate in all parts of life. So when you look at meetings and events, I don't think this is a trend that's just here now and is going to go away. I think you're really seeing the early stages of a principle, a foundation in people's lives that's going to move forward. And the question for meeting planners is, how do we take what the appetite is that people are seeking and bring that into meetings and events? Because I really think this is an opportunity for this industry to really lean into that space.
I actually love that, and it made me think about my own travel experiences. I mean, I'm on the road just like many of us are quite often, sometimes several times a month. And I feel like my own travel journey has changed over time. To your point, you brought up the spa. I used to look at my travels for work, and I still kind of do, as like a hectic, endeavor. But now I almost look forward to that quiet time and the quiet space, if you will, of just being on the road, away from the day-to-day obligations at home, and looking at ways that I can take care of Sarah, whether it's going to the gym, in the mornings or even after a long day, or you mentioned the spa. I think I've booked more spa appointments over the last year and a half than I ever have before when it comes to even work travel. So that's kind of what you're speaking to, right? And it's kind of for planners finding ways to bring that into your meeting so you as a traveler don't have to maybe do that on your own.
Totally. Yeah. And I think when people can come to a meeting or event and they leave refreshed, rejuvenated, they feel like a better person, I think that's the new gold standard for what a meeting is. And I think it's an excellent opportunity to lean into that space so that people feel like not only do they would like to go to this event, but they need to go to that event.
Love that. So because of what you do and what you specialize in, I'm sure you see firsthand a lot of the pain points that event organizers tend to deal with when it comes to bringing wellness into their events. So What are some of those biggest pain points that you're seeing, and how do you help address them?
I think the biggest pain point that people see, and it's kind of the elephant in the room, is budget. How do we do this with budget, and also where to start? So I'll kind of speak to both things. I'll start with where to start first. There's a lot of great opportunities and resources online to kind of learn more about what can wellness be within your event. There's a lot of articles and blog posts or YouTube videos. One of the best resources that I've seen out there in the industry is the Caesars Wellness Menu. I think it's very comprehensive in how it's food and beverage options, it's speaker options, it's activities like a sound bath or yoga sessions. There's also some competitions also within a smartphone application as well. So I think that's been an incredible resource for the industry as a whole. So I think there's a lot of great resources out there. In terms of budget, I really think there's a lot of great low-cost budget options as well, some that are entirely free. I think really just having intentionality with how you design your meetings and events, that's the X factor. It's like, how can you be intentional about what are we doing that really serves a purpose? There's a lot of great low budget options as well. So I think just being mindful of it, you'll realize that there's a lot more opportunity out there than you might think.
Are there any low budget ideas that you can share with us?
Yeah, so I think when you think about how do we really incorporate wellness in, I think there's two categories. I think one is connection and reflection. So on one hand, with connection, it's, okay, how do you really get the room interacting? And I think it could be something simple as table topics, that maybe at the beginning of a session, you open up saying, think about what's the top takeaway from yesterday's session, and share that with somebody at your group. That kind of gives an entry point for people to talk and not feel so intimidated about, how do I start a conversation with somebody? Sometimes table topics can be a really good idea to get the conversation going. I also think there's something that they do in Sweden called fika. And I visited Sweden like 2 years ago, and the tour guide was talking about it, and they say how twice a day they get coffee with a friend for 30 minutes with a coworker. And Sweden is always top 10 in that World Happiness Report. So they're onto something here. So I think even with a meeting event, is there a way that you can actually pair somebody up to grab coffee at the networking lounge for 20 minutes over the course of their time? How do you encourage new connections? Some people are extroverts and they'll make new connections right away. Others are introverts, and you really kind of need to set an environment for people to feel comfortable. And I think developing those connection moments are so important. Another thing is reflection. That can be something as simple as starting each session with a pre-recorded meditation exercise. It could also be something where you have a gratitude wall, or people maybe post on Post-it notes outside the main hall of what are they grateful for. It could be a postcard station where, people, you were saying, Sarah, how you're on the road a lot. People are traveling, they're spending time away from their family and friends. What if there's a postcard section where people can mail a note to their friend or family and be like, hey, this is an amazing event. I'm thinking of you. Can't wait to see you when I get home. It really kind of ties that connection of gratitude, of feeling connected, and also reflection. So I think it's really just leaning into those two categories: connection, reflection, and what can you do to really lean into that space. Going back at the beginning of our conversation about GMID, this industry has endured so much over the past 4 to 5 years with COVID, and it's come out of it incredibly strong. At the same time, I don't think you can say that we can just rest in knowing that this industry has gone through the dark days. I think there's some challenges still on the horizon. I think when you look at AI, virtual reality, when you look at augmented reality, Zoom and video calls continue to get better and better. There's a lot of challenges still on the horizon. But I think what's important to note, Sarah, is that digital tools, most of them don't focus on well-being at the center. Meetings and events, if you focus on well-being at the center, that is the differentiator. That no matter what's up ahead with these new technology trends and how they seem to be growing at a rapid pace, wellness is really something that can only happen in person. The digital tools, that's really not their specialty. If anything, they have the opposite effect on wellness. And I really think a trend going forward is, okay, doubling down on wellness, that this isn't a nice to have, this is a gotta have. And if you really nail it, you're really going to make your meeting, your conference, your event something that people want to attend and feel like they have to be there.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, the digital aspect that you brought up, because a lot of times we do try to cram that into meetings and try to implement the latest and greatest technology. And to your point, sometimes it does have that adverse effect. So I think if we also look at ways to just let our agendas breathe, and just allow for that human connectivity to happen, because it will happen. Not everyone is going to just run up to their hotel room and get back on their laptop. If you are intentional about that white space in your agenda, then people will fill it in ways that are comforting to them and also still very much beneficial for them being in that space. And then what other speaking engagements do you have as a Keynote that is traveling here, there, and everywhere?
It's been an eventful year, and the rest of the year looks to be really busy too. And I love talking about, how do you win from within? I think about airplanes, and an airplane always takes off against the wind. But the crazy thing is that an airplane always uses less fuel when it takes off against the wind. So the headwinds in our own lives, how can we harness it in such a way that it actually lifts us up instead of brings us down? So that's what I really love talking at conferences and organizations and businesses. And again, it goes back to wellness. How do you handle resiliency and really promote that within your team? So really excited. I love being on the road. I love traveling. The energy just in person is just so different than when it's online on Zoom. Although I love those tools when it's needed, it's great to be meeting with people face to face. So I'm excited for the rest of the year.
Congratulations on all of your success as a Keynote speaker. Nolan's information is right there on your screens. If you want to reach out to this wonderful human being directly and have him at your events, I highly recommend you do so. With that, Nolan, thank you so much for making the time to be here in person, because again, this is how true connections happen, although our first connection was via Zoom. I'm glad that we were able to meet in person as well, and look forward to your journey with Caesars Entertainment and more wellness content to come.
Thanks so much, Sarah.
You got it. All right, that does it for us on this edition. Let's check in with Courtney Stanley for more.
Thanks, Sarah. This past GMID was one for the books. Following this quick message from our sponsor, we'll show you how Las Vegas celebrated on April 11th. The Las Vegas resort community united to celebrate Global Meetings Industry Day with a marquee takeover, showcasing the value of meetings and conventions to Southern Nevada. Marquees featured the GMID logo and campaign hashtag Meetings Matter. Several Las Vegas resorts also featured blue exterior lighting to mark the initiative conceived by the U.S. Travel Association, the premier advocacy association for the travel industry. In 2003, Las Vegas welcomed nearly 6 million business travelers, many of whom added a leisure trip before or after a meeting or convention. According to data compiled by the LVCVA Research Center, when a trade show or event is hosted in Las Vegas, organizers generally receive a 9% boost in attendance compared to other destinations. In 2023, the convention sector in Southern Nevada supported an estimated 67,000 jobs and $15 billion in overall economic impact. We can't wait to see how 2024 data pans out later this year.
If you want to take your company off-site, then go off-site, way off-site. So off-site, predictable will never find you. And the status quo can status... Because average isn't invited to Las Vegas.
But vision and innovation, they were the first to RSVP.
The art of business requires imagination, and here, yours is invited to run wild.
Thank you for joining us on this edition of No Hidden Agenda TV. Tune in on May 2nd as we chat with MPI President and CEO Paul Van Deventer about WEC 2024 in Louisville. Thanks to our sponsors, Caesars Entertainment and the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Bureau.